Right. So hold on. Let's we're setting up on the Facebook Live here, and then we'll make sure that it is public. V'chule, v'chule.
over here on the side.
Um, let's make sure that we're good here. And this is public. Baruch Hashem.
Okay.
And this is Elas Yigdal.
3, I think, right?
Number 3, yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
That's us. So, okay, we saved that to the post. I think that now works.
Amazing. We're good to go. Okay, let's learn. So we are now in
the second line here.
That's right. So interesting. Happens to be, that Rav Kook has a siddur. They've translated a siddur of Rav Bezalel Naor.
Yeah.
It's translated into English, and it's amazing. As again, just English is very hard to capture, sort of the
yes
power of Rav Kook. I happen to be just looking on Shabbos at Yigdal, and so he missed the boat. he goes into a whole discussion as to in the Arizal whether or not you can limit HaKadosh Baruch Hu down to 13 principles, which is probably going to be talked about in the upcoming sessions. Like as opposed to 613 mitzvahs interdependently, sort of in this constellation. But he did not get into sort of the idea of this expanding consciousness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu yet. So, anyways, we have yet to see that. So I just
okay. Rav Kook it's one of those things that like you read it and then it percolates for like weeks and months and years, and pieces start to tie themselves together. I feel like every piece we learn in Rav Kook is like an exploration into Rav Kook's mind, and it's deep and interconnected, and everything is part and parcel of a brain and an understanding of the Ribono Shel Olam that is it's vast. So there's a lot of swimming to do.
Yes.
So
let's go for it. B'chabod Rav.
So he says Nimtza ve'ein eis el mitziyusai. Even to begin to translate that is somewhat fraught, right? Meaning we've just described the expansiveness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'yishtabach, and it's getting better, right? The eternal upward swing of the story of humanity. Nimtza ve'ein eis el mitziyusai. He is there. Ve'ein eis el mitziyusai, but there is no time constricting him. So let's understand what this means.
That's funny because it's sort of like he's on the grid, but he's not on the grid.
Right.
That's a little, ace time is part of the grid.
Right.
So he's there, but he's not really there. He's sort of superseding it.
It's nimtza, but meaning there's obviously a play on the nimtza and mitziusai. So we'll see how Rav Kook learns this. He says, "Anu margishim bekirbeinu hargashas hamitzius hamiuchades im hargashas hazman." We feel this feeling of unity together with our feeling of time. I don't know what that means yet. He says, "Hasiba hanafshis." The reason, from the perspective of the soul, shel chiburan shel shtei hargashas banu, of these two feelings, of the unity of the Ribono Shel Olam and our feeling of time. The reason that these two things are connected, hi mipnei she'hazman mukar b'nafshenu b'tzura shel shtifa, because time is something that kind of washes over us.
Flowing, right?
Right. It's something that is constantly passing. There is a stream of time. And time does not, it doesn't seem to stand still or to be constant. Meaning this moment is chalaf avar, right? It's over. The moment that it happens, it's already gone.
I guess like if you're to do sort of stream of consciousness image association with time, if you're to try to give time an image, it would not be a palace, it would be a river. That's kind of like a little what he seems to be saying.
Right. It's this eternal flowing force that is you can't hold it, you can't capture it, which is fascinating on many levels, because time is like the thing that escapes definition, probably more than anything else in the English language. Meaning we don't even have a good way to refer to it. When we say to somebody, "What time is it?" or "What's the time?" Like, these are kind of strange ways of describing something that is somewhat indescribable. We have a very hard time with this, meaning time with this. And yet we feel it. We very much feel the passage of time. It's something that we do feel, that we, to a certain extent, our feeling of it is our inability to capture it. That's part and parcel of what that feeling is. He says, "V'kachi midas hamtzius kulei ba'amitasa," and the same is true of all of reality. All of reality is the stream, is this flow, is this continuum. He shetefes tamid. Reality is flowing. B'chol rega mirigie hazman hayoser dakim hi machlefes es tzivyon shel kol hayveh. At every moment, at a moment of time, it's constantly shifting and changing from one moment to the next. V'chol matsui hu mutal tachas tanai ashinu b'poel tadir. And everything that exists is bound by the constraints of the ever-changing nature of reality. Meaning, nothing can be permanent in as much as what we are anchored to is an ever-moving reality. We don't feel a sense of stability, even as much as we want to. We feel a sense of constant movement.
Well, everything is changing, and also everything is also deteriorating and shifting. You know, if you're not willing to move with that, and you're clinging onto a piece of debris which is just going in the wrong direction. So everything in life is transient. So like, it's saying time and reality are transient, essentially.
And we feel the transient. I think this is his nakuda, is that we feel the transient nature of both time and reality. Yeah. They're interwoven, they're interlinked. I mean, effectively what he's describing here is the space-time continuum pre-Einstein, right? Einstein hadn't published anything by the time Rav Kook published a literature.
I actually did meet Einstein, you know that?
Yeah?
Yeah, well, I believe when Einstein visited the Holy Land, they had a meeting, and apparently in the Angel Among Men, Rav Kook described his perspectives on time-space continuum to Einstein, and it happens to be just as a side.
It's okay. We got to look that up. That's yeah. I mean, this concept of time and the changing and constant motion of it. I once described to a few students that not only does our time never repeat itself, right? This moment will never happen again, but this place will never happen again either, because practically speaking, the Earth and the solar system and the Milky Way are all traveling, right? Meaning the entire universe is expanding and traveling. Like, the scientists figured out how fast the Milky Way is moving. It's very quick. Meaning wherever we are right now, I mean, I'm sitting at this desk in this chair, in this, country and on this planet, it's true, but all of that is relative to where I am.
Right. So it seems constant, but actually it's really that everything is expanding at an exponential speed.
Right. It's getting faster and faster, moving further and further, which means that we're not in the same, meaning even in as much as we come back to the same place, we're not even in the same place, which is frightening when you just think about that.
What anchor we have to reality, right?
Right? Meaning it's very tenuous. Like, wherever we are right now this is it. Time and space, this moment, in this place, neither of those two things will ever, ever, ever happen again. Ever. It's like, okay. So that honing in on that feeling is that like, everything in existence is bound by this constant changing flow of everything. That is the backdrop of our lives. And if we want to upgrade ourselves to this level of reality, that is not connected to this foundation of the moment, we can't get there.
Me not even by donating a building with your name on it? I just drew. What about the tombstone?
Yeah.
Right. So the point is that there's no way to really sort of climb out of this transience, essentially.
Right. Meaning there is no way of achieving permanence. That's an impossibility. There's like a very relevant question. I was reading about this a little while ago. There's a very relevant question that nuclear physicists are dealing with at the moment, which is areas that are like that contain nuclear reactive materials are going to decay over the next few thousand years. And they're currently stored in places that, to the best of our knowledge, are safe. They're safe places. The problem is, how do you convey that this is unsafe for the entire duration of how long? We know more or less, how many thousands of years radioactive isotopes are going to be unsafe.
Right. Well, plutonium, as an example, has a half-life of 24,000 years.
Right.
So the problem is that humanity's never created anything which has lasted for 24,000 years yet. So, so first of all, how do you make sure that it's safe enough under those mountains in Colorado? But two is, how do you speak to those folks in the future?
Right. How do you give us time? Yeah. In what language are they going to speak in 24,000 years? How do you communicate that? Like those isotopes, we made something that's going to be there. Shkoyach. It's going to be there, in as much as anything else is going to be there. But those mountains might not even. How do you communicate that? We have no idea. It's like that project that they try to communicate, put like all of Earth's essential wisdom onto like a couple of chips and send them out onto satellite in space.
I hope they go Torah.
Right.
That would be fabulous.
That would be very interesting, right? The aliens would be like, that's a good chiddush. That's right. Meaning that if there's like sentient life forms somewhere in the universe, that they're going to see that and understand that. Like, how do you keep anything? And the answer is we cannot. We cannot detach ourselves from time. That's it. Like we can't do that. We cannot detach ourselves from this constant stream of existence.
Oh, so what can we do?
Like that's anu yodim. We know. We know that the Ribbon Shalom is. That's the one thing that is beyond time. Mis'aleh mikol yachasus. He is above all relativity. He is in relation to nothing. Umikol erchem shel shtifa v'shel shinuyim, and any values of the streams and the changes. So much so that there is no relationship between time and the Ribbon Shalom. There is no relationship. There is no dependence of Hashem on time at all, which is in stark contradistinction to us, whose entire existence is in Zman. Everything is time bound for us. Nimsa comes out. Nimsa, he exists. Ve'ein eis el mitziusai. That doesn't mean that he's not constricted by time in the sense that we think that he is timeless. But ve'ein eis el mitziusai means that time now has no bearing on him. It's not just that the Ribbon Shalom is infinite, but quite literally timeless. Time is irrelevant and meaningless. V'hametzius ha'elyona hazois hi mekor kol hametzius. And thus, this exalted, elevated existence is the source of all existence. Hi hametzius ha'amitis. This is the eternal existence, the real existence. Shatchuna shel hakchashas hametzius. Be'eze tzura ve'eze panim sheyesh ba'es betchuna ha'itis lo tigaba. This is the Rebbeinu Shalom exists in that place of confounding reality in such a way that it is in some way, shape, manner, or form possible to live in a world that is timeless. Ve'ein la imashum his yachasus. And in that space, in that place, in that existence, there is no relativity. Nothing is relative to that existence. Ki hu nimtza amitit muchlat. He is a existence that is completely true. Umimela ein eis el mitziusai, and therefore, by definition, automatically, there is no time that is constricting that reality. That's heavy.
It is heavy. It's so interesting because sometimes, when you go back to the flatlands marshal, the parable of like sort of, a third dimension communicating with a second dimension. So a lot of times the notion is that the second dimension, which is the lower dimension that we're in, is more simple than the more sophisticated dimensions that we're being communicated to from, right?
Right.
And so it's just interesting. This is the opposite. In a certain sense, the lower dimensions that we're in, which are constricted by time, are more complex than the simplicity, which is not bounded by time, of the higher dimensions. You see, it's the opposite way around. Hashem, in Hashem's world, so to speak, in the infinity of creation, the complexity of having these relative markers called time and space don't need to exist, right? It's only within our complex, fractured reality of detail that it exists, but in the sum total of infinity, that no longer becomes an issue. Just a very different way of looking at things.
It's the relationship between the seed and the tree to a certain extent.
Yes.
Right. Everything in the tree is from the seed, but there's no bark and there's no trunk and there's no branches, there's no leaves, there's no fruit, none of that is in the seed, but it's all in the seed. That, meaning the shorish of that chayim of the tree is the seed. That's what it is. That is where it comes from. And yet it diversifies as it grows. That diversification now makes all the parts of it now, I suppose, relative to other forces. And the seed exists as a seed, but leaves fall off in the winter, and the fruit grows only from time to time in the spring. Right?
Yeah. Yes. So the more simple reality is what we're talking about, where Akash Baruch is. It's hard to even sort of conceptualize this whole concept, because everything we do and everything we talk about is within the context of time,
Right.
You can talk about spiritual growth, but growth is a relative measure, meaning it's how much I am today as opposed to yesterday.
Right.
We can talk about, the relationships. Relationships are only within the context of time as well. When do they start? How they progress? And do they end? Everything we talk about is within the context, forgetting schedule and work, which is obviously always time bound. Anything you can think about is within the framework of time. So thinking about something beyond the framework of time is just sort of like it goes beyond sort of like the conceptualization. It's which is where we're stuck. That's exactly where we're stuck.
So if I'm not mistaken, I need to do Chazar here. I think Rav Hutner speaks about this in the first piece in the Pachad Yitzchak.
Pesach.
On Pesach, that chipazon is the attempt to escape this.
Rav Bleichman, that was Rav Bleichman's mimer on
right.
the idea of sort of breaking the bounds of reality almost.
Right, and I mean, Rav Hutner, of course, learned from Rav Kook. This idea of attempting to escape, at least for a moment, to break out of the moment, which is something that is close to, I mean, it is impossible for us to do in any real way. In any, like, it's not shaykh. Like we don't, We don't
Well,
exist.
it's the time you feel it the most, like I'm saying, if you're really into it, I noticed this the other day. I'm trying to take out a few in like a moment or two before tefillah, just to sort of, gravitate towards where I am right now. And if you're in a real pure meditative place where you can really appreciate tefillah, even if it's just for a few minutes out of the whole tefillah, you sort of almost like time stops. And I think the point is that when you're able to attach to the spiritual, when you're able to some degree connect to the Ribono Shel Olam who's beyond, in a certain sense, reality slows down, right? Everything, but that's because you're now anchoring yourself in something beyond, which is just fascinating. Very different way of looking at it.
I think Rav Nachman writes, I think this is in Sichos Aran, that the more elevated a person's intellect is, the less time bothers them. So he says, for example, a cotton, in my das. So you put a kid in a car ride for 10 minutes and they're already like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is the worst thing in the world, right? Time goes very, very slowly for kids. But as people get older and wiser, hopefully, time seems to speed up. There doesn't seem to be enough time. So he says that if one would be at a level of extreme understanding, meaning that of the Nevi'im, so then time can a person can almost transcend that barrier of time. And this, to a certain extent, is what we experience in dreams. Time in dreams don't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Dreams, I think the doctor said that dreams take a couple of seconds, maybe, right? And we can experience them as like weeks, months.
Yeah.
So time in those areas becomes very relative. I suppose that's maybe the only mashal that we can have to such a timeless existence. But the idea of hitching ourselves, or at least realizing that we are hitched to something that is timeless, that is the shorish of all of Chaim, is I suppose very meaningful. I saw this in the Bez Yaakov says this in a few places, but he mentions it in the middle of a piece in Parashat B'Shalach. He speaks about the lechem hapanim. So the lechem hapanim, Chazal tell us, was fresh all week. Stayed fresh all week. So he says, how did it stay fresh all week? So he says, because it was lifnei Hashem. Something that's connected, like a fruit that's connected to the tree, v'alei lo yibo. It doesn't wither. Once you detach it from the tree, then it withers. It's no longer connected to the Sharash HaChaim. So he says that's what if you put anything that you're going to put lifnei Hashem is going to be timeless. It's going to stay fresh forever.
Brilliant. What a beautiful idea.
It's that's the idea of the Ner Tamid as well.
Right, that's sort of in that space. It's in that zone.
If something is lifnei Hashem, so then it doesn't disappear.
That's amazing. That's our goal. Our goal is to attach ourselves to anything which really actually is long lasting. Anyways.
Yeah.
Rabbi, a pleasure as always.
My dear friend, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us. We should hitch ourselves to a timeless wagon. That's what we're trying to do.
Between sun and snow.
That's it. All right, Tzaddik. Hashem should bless you.
Amen. Pleasure as always. See you next week.
Later.